Hello and welcome everybody to today's podcast. Today I'm joined by Nicky, a friend and a colleague of mine who I've had the privilege to go to some amazing places actually in the world with. So Nicky, thank you so much for your time today and coming to speak to us about talking about suicide, how to open up those conversations. If you could just introduce yourself to the listeners, that would be great, and just tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, hi. So I, as Nicky is, retired police officer, 30 years service. I was in Thames Valley Police. The majority of my career was based in the detective world, very much reacting to crime. But with 14 years service, I went off and became interested in the world of negotiation and explored the kind of what the role was all about, and then was lucky enough to be accepted onto the Thames Valley Police cadre. And without going into the details of it, basically a volunteer group of 28 officers that would turn out. And so I did my initial training, which felt very methodical, as in we were given a model to work to, which felt very much like the model for interviewing suspects, for interviewing victims, and off I went and went out operationally. And obviously over the years realised that whilst it's all based very much in psychology, as it should be, each of us has our own style. Each of us will find different ways of being with people. And so I became even more interested in the kind of background to the training that was happening, and was lucky enough then to be invited to support the Metropolitan training. I have, over the years, been deployed to many suicidal situations as well as other crisis situations. I have, in my retirement, with the hindsight of everything that I've done and the experiences, I have very much, as Nicky has, looked to use those skills and share those skills to, a far wider circle of industry, and even with, family members and friends, because the skills that we have learned and then used are so massively valuable that I, like you, feel that we should be sharing these things much further and much wider. So yeah, I did 17 years both operationally and in the training environment overseas in the UK, and I still occasionally go overseas and assist foreign forces with their training. And I'm very delighted to be invited to come and talk to you today.
Oh, thanks very much. But those people of you that don't know about the world of hostage and crisis negotiation, there's a really intense course that you go on, and you were actually my instructor on my course in December 2008, and you did my first ever assessment when we did active listening skills in the old accommodation block of Hendon. So we go way back. But but you were one of the people that piqued my interest in negotiation.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you very
I'm
much
really pleased to hear that. Yeah.
And I know you've done some work with universities as well around crisis management with students, haven't you?
Yeah, so that was possibly the first real thing that I did after retirement. I got involved with Essex University, and they were doing a review of security, physical security, and the guy who was asked to do it was a fellow retired negotiator. We get everywhere. Yeah. And he contacted me and said what he'd realised was that whilst we're putting this huge focus on cybersecurity and security of the buildings, one of the things that seemed to be lacking was around the security of students who were in crisis. And so we did quite a lot of work with their security teams around if you are the first response, and it was very much the until keeping somebody safe, keeping a student safe until such time as whichever authority, whether it be the police, whether it be a mental health team, whether it be a relative, comes to take over. But just to make sure, as you know, one of the big things that I always come back to is you need to hear the things that aren't being said, and you
Mm.
need to be listening for the throwaway comments and actually understand that they're trying to talk to you. And unfortunately, security teams, and I guess not just in universities, are very much, well, they're like the police, the first responder
Yeah.
police. They have a job to do that they need to get on with, and then they need to move on. But it's just kind of opening their ears to what actually is it that you're being told, and then just giving them the basic tools. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that, because the skills that we have and that we learn and the experiences can be used with any person who is suicidal, who is in crisis,
Yeah.
to help them. And that's what this podcast is about. It's about, for those people who are worried about a friend, about a relative, maybe their son or daughter, perhaps a colleague at work, who there's something not just quite right about them. Maybe they've seen that they're self-harming, maybe they've seen a change in behavior and they want to open the conversation, but they're frightened to do it, and they don't want to say the wrong thing. So I'd love you to share some of your experience with our listeners and give them some tips that they can take away today, that if they are in that position, if they do have somebody that they love and care about or know who's in crisis, that they can open up that conversation about suicide.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've had a think about this with the kind of what is it in particular, and I've already touched upon. I think the very fact that you may have concerns shows that, trust your gut instinct, particularly if it's somebody you've known for a long time, you know them well, a family member, somebody you've worked alongside, because it's the subtle changes that can give you the opening. The bit that you see as different that may have given you that gut reaction is, in the first instance, is to name it. As you
Mm,
said, if you've spotted that somebody's behaving in a slightly different way, just name it. The fact is, you always, if somebody's persistently late, they used to be a punctual person and now they're not coming in at, and without it being a challenge, just that kind of, I've noticed that you're running late quite a lot at the moment. Is there something going on? Just it's not an accusatory, it's not a judgmental, it is just a question. And I think if you listen to what the words are
mm,
that are apparently throwaway, so throwaway comments that slide in to conversations, if you hear those, then they, to me, are a key for opening up a wider conversation, so that, in the middle of a long conversation, somebody might just say something like, but then, and to be fair, nothing's worth it really, is it? And they carry on talking. Hang on to that phrase and come
mm,
back to it, and just say to them, you said about, well, nothing ever really matters anyway. Where's that come from? What's that mean? In what context? And just see if they have anything more to say about it. We also are listening for the things that are not said. So
mm,
if you have somebody who absolutely avoids a particular topic, whatever that might be, I have used in the past examples of, so for instance, if somebody asks me, why do you have children? No, I don't have children. Why don't you have children? Well, it's kind of none of your business. Then it might be in a wider context that might pique just it sounds like Nicky's perhaps a little hurt that she doesn't have children, or something has happened, or there may be just more to it. The kind of me shutting down a conversation about something
mm,
might just be a clue that I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there because it's going to hurt and I'm going to get emotional. And actually, it's those things that we need to find a way into. And we use that little technique of, you know, I feel a bit concerned when you say that,
Hmm.
it's none of my business, because I can actually see that you'd make a great mum, and it feels like you might be a bit hurt around that. So to have those ears open to
Mm.
the things that, yeah, you can feel that they're important, they are not putting the same importance on it. Try and use those as the key into, well, what's going on here.
Mm.
So yeah, listening for what's not being said, listening for those throwaway comments, using them as a way to open up a conversation. The fact that they've said it, try and be exact in what they've said.
Mm.
Don't reframe it into what you think they've said. The actual words that they've said, just put them back to them. And what's that about? Where did that come from?
Mm.
I think a very important aspect of that as well is the validation of those feelings and those comments. And if we are concerned about somebody, and I say that because this isn't everyday life, this isn't chit chat with somebody who you have no concerns about, those people that you've got that gut instinct, absolute validation of what they're feeling, because there is an element of loneliness, I think, with
Mm.
somebody who has found themselves in a suicidal state, because it is quite possibly an unfamiliar, it is possibly a long held, there is no readily available help all the time.
Mm.
Sometimes people have to just manage on their own as they see it. So if somebody has said something to you which really strikes an alarm bell, then so important that we validate it and don't use any kind of, oh, don't be silly. No, 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 don't be silly. That's not. Why would people think that of you? Why would you imagine that that's the thing? Is
Mm.
absolutely accept what they've said and confirm that they have a right to feel that way. And so I would say with those, comments around, it's really not worth me even trying because I never succeed at anything, is to
Mm.
head into well, what makes you say that? And if they hopefully give you some more information, is to encourage them kind of like, well, where does that come from? And use those open questions to get more information. And at some point, I expect we are able to say that what you've told me and what you've said has happened and how you're feeling makes perfect sense.
Mm.
And, I'm not surprised that you're feeling exhausted. I'm not surprised that you're feeling alone. I'm not surprised that you're feeling desperate about whatever the situation is, because you have, and whatever it is that they may have shared with you. So absolutely, if they feel that way, they have a right to feel that way, and we need to validate it and acknowledge it.
Mm.
And I guess the third thing that I would say for me, it's less about what you're going to say, because we know that actually silence
Yeah.
is a great tool. Time, giving somebody time. I've talked about, the psychology that sits behind the model of communication that we are taught and we teach, and I absolutely stand by. But I think we perhaps don't acknowledge, or didn't acknowledge necessarily as much as I think we could have, time.
Mm.
Giving somebody the space and time to talk. So the reason we have teams of volunteers within police forces to turn out to negotiate with people who are in crisis is because frontline officers don't have the time. They need to be somewhere else. There is
Mm.
another job coming in. that they are expected to turn to. And the whole reason that we have these teams of volunteers up and down the country is because when I got a phone call at whatever time of the day or night to deploy to somebody in crisis, that was the only thing I had to do. I didn't have to worry about going back to work. You know, my bosses, my teams all knew that if I had gone, I had gone. And taken away, I don't have my mobile phone on me. I have some support with me, but my focus is 100% on that person. My time is their time. And even when we would have those external pressures of, you know, motorways that have been closed perhaps, or trains that have been stopped from running, that's not my concern. We would take out everything, give it to somebody else to deal with so that we could focus. And I do think that allowing somebody the time and space to say what they want to say in the time they want to say it, not to put any kind of deadline to we need to be out of here, you know, for something else, if you are able to.
Mm-hmm.
And just being that calm, supportive person beside them. In policing, what I learned and what I think I became fairly adept at is whilst everybody else is running around like headless chickens, being the person who can just stand still, press pause, and allow time for things to settle. And particularly for somebody who is, I would say, on the brink of a suicidal action, when they are in a place of danger, then we absolutely need to just slow everything down, pause, and give them time to work through perhaps, like, you know, some of the things that hopefully we will be able to offer as the reassurance as to why they're feeling the way they're feeling. And of course, you know, we very much want to solve problems in the police. As a negotiator, it wasn't for us to go in and just solve the problem for that person in crisis, because actually we don't know what the problem is. And that again comes back to space and time. We need to give people the space and time to actually dig into why it is they feel that way. But as a friend, as a family member, of course, if there are solutions that you can see and you can offer in support of them, then, you know, of course, we're going to offer them. But give them time to make sure that you properly understand what the problem is before you start thinking about solutions.
Mm.
And I don't know if now's a time to talk about our old friend Kubler Ross.
Yes, I know
My
you love
favourite.
Kubler Ross. Your favourite topic in the
So
negotiation.
my little
Yeah, please do.
my favourite. So to put it in its simplest terms, Kubler Ross, the cycle of grief and the emotions you go through. What we as negotiators will be really aware of is the fact that when somebody is in crisis, saying that my car's broken down, and you know, my car's broken down, my life's a mess, I can't see any, I'm of value to nobody, so you know, here I am on top of this building threatening to commit suicide. What we know is that that car breaking down is the last of the things that have happened. And I'm going like this because the emotions. So when something happens that isn't great, we go through the cycle of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. And dependent on what the impact is, dependent on our own personal resilience, how impacted those emotions are and how long they last will vary. But if you have somebody who has been perhaps through a divorce, has been through financial difficulties as a result of that divorce, has had to go through a custody hearing as a result of that divorce, has had to downgrade their lifestyle, perhaps take a different job to accommodate childcare, to have to scrimp and save, and actually the car they have is all they can afford. There may be school trips and there may be school holidays and there might be other, all host of things that are affecting their resilience, and then the car breaks down. And that's why I say be sure that you're dealing with the problem and not just my car's broken down.
Yeah.
Because even in that scenario, all of those things building up, it might not be that the divorce is the problem. It might be the relationship that led to the divorce. So there's always, those, you can go back and back and back, whatever it might be. But all I'm trying to highlight is don't don't assume the first thing you're given is it.
Yeah.
Because it's likely to be the first thing you're given is the easiest thing for them to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. And we know that that will happen because that's how we deal with our emotions. And when we're so tunnel vision, we're like, well, the car's broken down, so that's what it is.
Yeah.
And then when we dig and we just like peel back like an onion a little bit, layer by
Yeah.
layer, we'll get to that heart of the, okay, what's the real problem here? Because
Yeah.
as you say, that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just what I'm going to tell you, because at the moment I don't trust you enough. So I'm just going to tell you
Yeah.
about my car breaking
Yeah.
down. And also,
Yeah.
it's all I can manage at the moment. So yeah, really. Tell us a little bit more about Kubler Ross as well, and those emotions that people are likely to go through.
So, well, the five emotions identified through a study of grief. So this is about bereavement. And I think in the first study that came out, what she was saying, Elizabeth Kubler Ross, was, there will be a period of denial. This hasn't happened. There will be a period of anger. How can this have happened? It's not fair that this has happened. A period of bargaining. Well, if I'm expected to live with this or accept this, or then either something else has to happen or somebody else needs to do something, there will be a kind of a bargaining in context with whatever the issue is. And then there will be a period of depression where there is a realization that no, this is real and it is happening.
Mm.
And that's perhaps when we will find somebody in a suicidal state. And then hopefully with support, family, friends, charity, networks, whatever it might be, hopefully we will get to a state of acceptance that it has happened and now we need to find our way to a new normal and live with whatever this might be. And I remember that realization, having learned about Kubler Ross probably 2 or 3 times in my career. I think on like leadership courses, we were taught about it. It comes into change management, all different little aspects. And I was working on a major crime team, and we'd had 3 weeks of non-stop, 18-hour days, no rest days, absolutely exhausted. And I had spotted that on this particular day, as I was heading into work, I think I can finish at about 6 today, because I think we've got this tied up. I think I'll be home by like 6:30. Might even have a glass of wine. And at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a shout went up from one of the other offices because we still had one lad that we were looking for to arrest.
So
And
shout for those that are not in the policing world is a call. A call.
well, no, a literal shout.
Well, a
A
literal
shout
shout.
came. A literal shout came
Ah,
out of the
okay.
office. Yeah, and I heard a voice shout, "They've got him. They've got him." So our one outstanding person that needed to be arrested had been found and had been arrested. And my head said, "Oh no, they haven't," because I went into denial, because I knew exactly what this meant. This meant you're not going home at 6 o'clock. None of that. You're probably, back in work tomorrow, whatever it might be. And I went through those emotions. And I mean, in the policing world, so I denied it. No, they've got the wrong person. No, it can't be true. Very quickly, it was proven it was true. I was angry at the fact that I was losing my time. I was going home and now I'm not. So I was angry about that. And then my bargaining, as I desperately tried to find a way to make this feel better. And this is a bit technical because he was arrested in the Metropolitan Police area. I'm in Thames Valley, and there's a whole host of rules you don't need to know about when somebody crosses the border. And my thought was, if we can keep him that side of the border till about 9 o'clock tonight, then I will still get my night. And of course, that bargaining held absolutely nothing with the powers that be. And yeah, I had to be a bit peeved, shall we say. For a while, I had my bit of depression, and then I accepted, right, I've got a job to do, let's go on and get it. So the fact that it touches, and I then also realised how you can use it. So victims of crime are in crisis, going through those emotions. People who have been arrested are in crisis and are going through those emotions. I have looked wider and further. So, as well as with university students, I went to a conference of healthcare security, and we talked there about how many people are in crisis. It's not just the drunk on a Saturday night. It's not just the suicidal person that has been delivered to you by the police. It is the patient. It is the patient's family. It is the doctors and the nurses and the porters and all of the staff who are being stretched to the edge of their abilities and expected to deliver a service are regularly in their shift hitting oh no, that's not happening. And they are in denial. And I will take that back as well to, as you were saying about, I will tell you that my car's broken down because it's the last thing that's happened and it's the easiest thing to tell you. And I also think there is a denial involved in how they feel because it is not an accepted societal norm for somebody to say, I feel like I want to kill myself.
Yeah.
And actually, they will be in a denial about that feeling for who knows how long. But at some point, there will be a realization.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I always use when you talk about Kubler Ross, Ross, you see it all of the time. I always give the example of Meg when she was 8 about Christmas Day, and we'd promised that she'd watch a Christmas video. And of course, adults start having a glass of wine or two. The meal runs over before you know it, it's 10 o'clock at night, and it's like, Meg, I'm really sorry, you're gonna have to go to bed. And we go through that whole, no, you said we're going to watch a video, Nick. What are you talking about? To that anger, no, you said we were going to watch the video, that's unfair, that's not fair. To that bargaining, can we watch an hour now and an hour tomorrow? And then finally all of those, the sadness, the stamping of the feet, and then we get to acceptance of going to bed. And that happened in 3 minutes, all of those emotions there. So this shows up all the time in your life, and why it's important for people who are suicidal or people that want to have the conversation about that is about recognizing those emotions, about what you're likely to get and what you're likely to expect. And none of that's right and none of it's wrong. And they don't go in order either, do they?
No.
Sometimes we get to acceptance and sometimes we go straight back to anger, especially grief and huge amounts of loss. You can be on that roller coaster of emotions for a long period of time. I just want to bring that conversation back a little bit to validation and how key that is. Because in life, especially when we want to show that we care about the other person, we have been taught, and it's an unconscious way. Honestly, I wish I'd been taught all of this when I was at school and not in my early 40s, because it would have helped my life a lot, especially in those teenage years, in your 20s and your 30s, as you're getting more life experience. I often use this example around either a friend who's going through a relationship breakup and they're upset and they've asked to meet you for a drink and you go out for a drink. And often what we'll say is, they were never good enough for you. There's plenty more fish in the sea. Don't worry about it. You're gorgeous. I love you. You're beautiful. And all of these things for the right reasons. Sometimes all we want the other person to say is, recognize my emotions, validate them for me.
Yeah.
And let me just be in this space for a period of time. Just look simply like, gosh, that sounds awful. I can see how sad this has made you.
Yeah.
And then we have the conversation. So supporting the emotions, we call it connection before correction or connection before direction.
Yeah.
That's a simple way to know that. And it's the same with the young people in our lives as well. If they
Yeah.
have a terrible experience from school, they come back and you recognize something's not right, and they say, well, yeah, like Mandy, the most popular kid in the school, called me ugly and an idiot in the lunch queue.
Mm.
And we immediately go to that defensive thing, especially as
Yeah.
a parent or an
Yeah.
aunt or whoever we might be, and we're like, oh no, you're beautiful. I didn't ignore Mandy. Mandy knows nothing. And that's great. A more powerful way would be to recognize gosh, I can imagine that was really embarrassing for you. Sounds like
Mm.
that really hurt you, and
Yeah.
then support that emotion. And then, as
Yeah.
you said, help them to find that solution around
Yeah.
what can you do? What would you like to do? And give
Yeah.
them the time and space rather than going in
Yeah.
with that, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to fix it. Often,
I know
often
where she lives.
young people as well. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. I know where she is. I'm going round now. Yeah.
I
So,
think the other thing as well for that is about how you can use it to preempt something.
mm,
So, and you know that I've talked about this particularly when I was in charge of a team of detectives and dishing out work to them, that I knew there were some jobs that were going to be less well received than others for various reasons. And so, if you know that you are about to drop a bombshell,
mm,
then you can prepare how you deliver that bombshell, being cognizant to the emotions that it might actually incur. So that kind of starting the thing with I know you're not going to believe this, which is the denial,
mm,
and you're not going to like me, which is the anger, but this is what I've done to try and make it easier. There's
mm,
the bargaining, and I'm going to give you half an hour, or don't worry about it till tomorrow. Don't think about it till then. Give them time to be a bit down about it,
mm.
and then hopefully you can bring them into acceptance. And that's a very glib way of putting it, but that is
Yeah.
the essence of
Yeah.
you can use it
Yeah.
proactively as well as reacting to what is happening in front of you.
Yeah. So you've given us three really good tips, and you've told us all about Kubler Ross, and you can go and Google
Oh,
Kubler Ross around her past, about the work that she did and why she became so interested in these emotions and how they work, especially in change and people that might be really struggling and feeling like they don't have a place in the world and don't know how to control those emotions and feeling suicidal, and how that shows itself up. So listening was key right at the very beginning, listening for the things that they're not saying, and also
mm-hmm.
picking up on the things that they are saying, but moving quickly away from, that have probably got more impact, and then just bringing them back to that. And the second one was validation, incredibly important, I think, personally, about that
Mm-hmm.
emotions. And I was talking about this yesterday, actually, to a group of GP practitioners. Is if somebody is in crisis when they come to see you and you start talking to them about policy and procedure, that is not going to work, because until you deal with my emotions, that, then I'll start listening to you about your policy and procedure. But at the moment, I don't care about it. So if it's something along the line of, let's say you've got a teenager in your life who's decided they don't want to go to school for whatever reason, if you start telling me about policy and procedure, that you have to go into education, but we haven't dealt with my emotions and how I'm feeling, then I'm going to push back on that. So expect that. If you validate me and recognize how I'm feeling, and let me be in that space, then that's okay as well. And the third one was time, about creating that time, which is really interesting as a family member, or if you're in the workplace, about how do we create this space. So what tips can we give to people? Because we used to have hours. We used to have like
Mm-hmm.
hours that we could be there, because the most important thing was to save life. But when you're a parent, when you're a teacher, when you're a colleague or a relative or whoever you might be, or a friend, a young person, and you notice that one of your friends is starting to self-harm, how do we create that time? What would be a tip from you around creating time?
You see, I love a walk, and I love that kind of, with a friend, I would absolutely say, "Do you want to meet me? We can go for a walk, stop and get some coffee, look at the birds." And I mean, I
Mm,
on my own, you know me, but there's a bench by the river that's got my name on it. I'm sure when the time comes, and just being outside, there's another thing, isn't there, about being next to somebody rather than face to face with them when you're talking. So I would, and I think about with my nieces, we'll go and do an away day somewhere. Let's Nothing massively active, but if it's, I'll drive them down into work, or I'll drive them to wherever it is they need to be. But just spending time is finding that time for one-to-one. And then obviously the other thing, when it came to work, I would always, if I needed to have, a challenging conversation with somebody in whatever sense you want to interpret challenging, take them out of the office. It was always away from the office, away from the desk, out down the high street, whatever else. And if you are in a position to clear somebody else's diary for them, do it. Just make sure that people understand that this is from a management point of view. If you're doing it from a management point of view, it's very different than doing it from a friendship point of view. But yeah, no, I think going back to the friends, go for a walk.
Yeah. And that's been proven from research. That side-by-side conversation comes from child psychology around having your best conversations, and actually having, like, I know you spend a lot of time with your nieces, but we know from practice as well, and we know also from suicide intervention, especially in those critical moments, we're never opposite somebody like this. Like, this is what we're doing. We're always by the side. We're always by the side, and we're there, and we're not encroaching on space. We're giving them time, we're giving them space. And I think as we draw this episode to an end, there's two words I think are really powerful when we talk about suicide intervention, when we talk about speaking to people in crisis. And for me, it's kindness and respect. And those two words hold so much power. No matter what you think or feel at the time, you put all of that to one side, and we treat everybody with kindness and respect. What's your experience of kindness and respect?
Oh, I mean, you'll always get me with a bit of kindness. Yeah, always.
Yeah, and it just helps. It just creates that space for people to open up and not feel judged.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time in this podcast episode. I'm really grateful, and thank you for sharing those top tips. At the end of this podcast, we will share some telephone numbers and places you can go if you do feel suicidal. And for those of you that are wondering how to open up those conversations, there'll be more in this series of podcasts that you can listen to.